Welcome, everybody. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California and a certified life coach who specializes in love and sex addiction recovery, betrayal trauma, and infidelity recovery. And today's webinar is going to be focused on what I think is one of the most insidious and abusive and traumatizing things that show up in a relationship dyad, and that is called gaslighting. And so today's webinar is going to be focused on helping you understand what is gaslighting, how do you heal from it and repair from it, and then what are the ways that you can construct your life and your relationship to try to prevent gaslighting from happening in the future. Because I am a huge proponent of the idea that we never really go to school and learn how to do relationships. We kind of just muddle through and figure it out through error and hurt and struggle and then triumph. And so that's what I've dedicated my time and energy to, which is teaching you all what I know to be the latest research and understanding of what kind of goes wrong in relationships, from extreme uncovering addictions, multiple infidelities and betrayal, all the way over to run-of-the-mill issues of ineffective communication and not matching each other's intentions and understandings, or just trauma that keeps bubbling up into the relationship. So my theory is, if I can armor you with education and a better understanding of what might be going on in your relationship dynamic, the more likely you'll be to be empowered to change it, see it happen, and start making the very purposeful steps to alter the cycle. So let's start by saying, what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse where someone either consciously, purposefully, directly, or even subconsciously manipulates another person into believing that their reality is not actually accurate. So it's based on a 1940s black and white movie called Gaslight, and that's the term gaslighting. That's where it came from. And the premise is that there's this man who's a thief, and he tricks a woman into marrying him. He seduces her, and she doesn't know this, but there's this lost fortune that he's been trying to find in her family, and he married her to gain access to the home so he can continue to search around the home for that lost fortune. And in the process, he's also slowly and systematically making her feel like she's going crazy. At night, she hears rumbling around up in the attic, and the rumbling around causes the gas lights to flicker. And she says, what's going on? And he, instead of, he's not giving her all the information, he's denying her the truth, because he's obviously trying to protect his nefarious plan. He just makes her think that she's crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. You're making this stuff up. He goes even steps further, where he'll move stuff around the house, and she'll say, what happened to that picture? And he's like, I don't know what is wrong with you, but you just keep doing things like that, picking things up, losing things. He gifts her things, and then he takes them away, but makes her think that she lost them. He makes her believe in social settings that she's crazy and she's unstable, so that she continues to isolate herself. And so that's obviously the most extreme example of what gaslighting can be, is this huge, nefarious plan that someone wants to constantly keep you off the scent so they can victimize you. We see gaslighting most often come up in relationship dyads where there's maybe like a narcissistic type personality, either man or woman, quite frankly. And it also is always prevalent, almost always prevalent, when there's any kind of addiction present. So that can even be substance abuse addiction, gambling addiction, porn addiction, sex addiction, etc. Because the obvious reason for that is an addict is devoted. I mean, their addiction and the acting out, they protect it at all costs because it's their best friend, their number one coping skill. And so when other people have instincts and intuition that are telling them something's off, they get them off the scent quickly by gaslighting them. So it's not just like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't know where that money went. It's like, if you nag me all the time and constantly question my judgment, then we probably wouldn't be having these issues. And man, you've always been jealous. You've always questioned everything about me. Why do you never ever trust me? And there's a lot more examples that I can give to that. But in so many terms, gaslighting shows up when someone is trying to maintain a power over someone else in some way or another, because they're trying to either just avoid any kind of conflict, because wherever there might be conflict, someone might win or lose, maintain power over them so they can kind of make decisions and do things around them, not with them, so they can continue to act out of the relationship, etc. The biggest issue with gaslighting as well is that they're more invested with being right, with being more powerful, and trying to shut down any kind of conflict, any kind of adversity in that moment, right? That you might see something differently, that you disagree with what's going on, that you're not okay with it. And so they'll use gaslighting to shut it down. So let me give you a couple examples, and then I'm going to talk about kind of gaslighting in general, where we see it a lot. So some examples of gaslighting is you might be arguing with your partner over something hurtful that he or she said to you, and he or she will just instead respond, gosh, you are always so sensitive. Maybe if it's a man to a woman, like, are you on your period? Is that why? Or, is something going on? But it's kind of just saying, I can't hold space for this argument or why we're having this problem or why you seem to be upset. So I'm going to just quickly tell you, your anger, your feelings aren't validated. And also maybe there's some other reason, that I have nothing to do with that. It's your emotions, your hormones, something else going on, or that you're kind of always like this. You might ask your partner, say, hey, you've been working too much, you're a little standoffish, or you're not really giving me or the family the attention that we need. And the partner will not only say, no, they can't hold space for that. They won't want to ask questions about why you feel that way. They'll just say, well, maybe you just need to be so needy. Maybe I do. I'm there all the time. But as we know, especially for those of you who are with addicts, they might physically be there, but not exactly emotionally present. And so there might be invalidation around that. Another example, your partner might insist you're being ridiculous and out of control when you actually feel like your communication is very clear and that you have appropriate anger or appropriate confusion or appropriate sadness that any human would feel under these conditions. But instead, you're just kind of being dismissed that this emotion is erratic, it's ridiculous, it's uncalled for. And the classic one that you might have all heard is, you should be over this by now, or you need to really calm down. When again, you feel like your feelings and your responses are just very reasonable. Like you're not asking for much. The number one thing that I look for in clients when they come in, struggling in their relationship, the word is always confusion. So they come in just really confused about what their reaction should be, what is stable and unstable, what they have the right to be upset about. Do other people get upset about this? How should I respond when I uncover this? Things that, if you surveyed a large group of people, they might all have a somewhat similar answer. But someone who's been gaslighted finds themselves extremely confused and upside down. And that's the trauma that's happening, is when you have someone constantly invalidating your reality, it chips away at your instincts and intuition to the point that it creates this cycle where, you might just being as a normal human with instincts and intuition, we notice things, we see things, something doesn't feel right to us, something feels uncomfortable to us. That look, that person, that phone call, that late night activity, and you will inquire about it because that's what you were built for. You were built with an autonomic nervous system, a survival mechanism inside you that's supposed to like pick up when things aren't right. And then you seek out your partner, a trusted loved one, someone who, again, if you're like a securely attached person, you expect them to be giving you the same benefit of the doubt, the same generous interpretations of what you're asking for. Someone who you think is, securely attached people are supposed to be attuned to each other's needs. They're supposed to talk about hard things. When ruptures are made, right? When we screw up, they're supposed to be repairing. There's supposed to be forgiveness. So you will seek them out with that secure attached behavior. And then they'll just kind of throw you off by like, no, you're crazy. You're wrong. This is out of this world. And I have no idea what you're talking about. And it really spins you upside down, because when you experience betrayal trauma, right? That's trauma. That's betrayal at the hands of someone where there's an understood commitment that like you're my teammate or family members, right? That they're supposed to be your family and you're supposed to give each other the benefit of the doubt. You have honesty or transparency. This is a place where I can be flawed but still loved. You think that's what it's supposed to be, and then someone makes these either direct or indirect commitments and promises to be that person with you, and then all of a sudden you find out this stuff's coming out of their mouth that, am I crazy? Because the person that I married and had children with now suddenly has assessed me and told me that I'm crazy. So maybe I am emotionally unstable. And then by an extension of someone constantly accusing you to be unstable, it develops this shame voice in you of like, oh my God, maybe I am unstable. Is this an unstable reaction? And so sadly, being gaslighted just sets you up for more gaslighting, because as you get your intuition and instincts get chipped away at more, and your shame voices build and build, those voices that are like, you're not enough, you're too messed up. Who's going to love this? Because it's too much of a hot mess. You become more dependent on that partner to validate your reality, because you've already been thrown off and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I do make the wrong interpretations. Maybe I do pick up the wrong everything. And in fact, some of you who've already gone through discovery, my guess is, even though it's been devastating and destructive to your life, there's often this part of you that's like, holy crap, I knew there was something. That it is very validating to finally have, when you uncover this or you do that full disclosure, to say, oh my gosh, when I thought something was wrong and you were calling me crazy, or you were telling me I was unstable, or I kept picking up this energy that you were just not with us. That's you healing and repairing and reconnecting with your instincts and intuition again. Because, I'm going to skip forward to one of the ways to heal and develop a structure and a safety net around you so gaslighting doesn't happen again, is that you can never let someone else's reality supersede yours. Yes, we are social beings, and I will go into more detail about this later, but we're wired to connect, right? So I'm wired to want to consult with other people. I'm wired to want to check in and get feedback and validation from them. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're pair bonded with a partner. You're supposed to want their feedback and their validation, but you can't let their interpretation of the reality supersede, trump, and cancel out yours. So it's a really delicate boundary and happy medium that you're trying to reach as you're moving forward from a relationship where you might have been gaslighted in the past. So let's we talked about the cycle and not ever letting another person's reality supersede your own, because remember, we are all flawed. And do consult, in fact, that's going to be one of the processes to heal and structure your life to avoid gaslighting, is to lean into a community. That's why I love programs like We Tonglin or sexandrelationshiphealing.com, where this is a place where you're supposed to be able to bounce things off from other people and kind of reconnect with your instincts and intuition. This is my gut's telling me that this is how I need to respond. This is the boundary I need to set. This is what might be going on. And then kind of seek feedback from someone else who's not invested in the outcome, right? They're not in the relationship with you. So they're not trying to seek power over you, or they're not worried about being wrong or in a potentially like manipulative type relationship. And they can kind of just say, yeah, that makes sense. I'm hearing the story and it's making me really angry. So yeah, I can validate your anger. This is the thing, is we're moving towards understanding how to get through gaslighting and avoid gaslighting in future relationships. One of the number one rules is that you have to be okay with agreeing to disagree sometimes. So you will sometimes present to someone an issue, like that I'm really struggling. Let's say my husband and I had an argument and he got really upset at me and said, look, you're acting just like your sister. And I really hate when you start acting like your sister. And that like enrages me. And so in that moment, I create this story in my head that's like, oh my gosh, he doesn't like me. He doesn't respect me. He views me as X, Y, and Z. That's what our brain does, by the way. Our brain really quickly in survival mode wants to structure a story. It's not like, oh, this husband of mine can love me and then sometimes disagree with me and sometimes not see things the same way that I see them. Your brain does not like that. Your brain likes black and white. When you are faced with distress, it really quickly wants to write a story. Okay, this is the bad guy. This is the person that's out to get you. This is the threat that you need to defend yourself from, fight to defeat, etc. And as you can imagine, the brain's involuntary response to adversity that shows up in a relationship, because all relationships have conflict and adversity, is kind of counterproductive to what I'm talking about. So you have to use your higher functioning to say like, okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree. This is my partner. And one of my favorite sayings is that you need to try to listen to understand the person, and not listen to respond. I'm a person that, when I get in conflict, I have very high arousal, and we're going to talk about that, how to downregulate in those arguments. And I will try to fight my way out, defend my way out. I'll cut somebody else down. But those are the things that are counterproductive when there is gaslighting involved. Let me make a note and let me go back for a minute to let you know gaslighting. There's very mild versions of gaslighting, by the way, that all of us kind of do to some extent. And then there's more egregious gaslighting that's kind of done to protect and hide a nefarious plot that's going on outside your privy. So one of the more common things I always think of, parenting. Your child at a park and you're saying, hey, watch out for those cracks. Don't run so fast. You're going to fall. And then all of a sudden, in that exact moment, my child runs and trips and eats it and just starts screaming his head off. It is an instinct of ours to walk up and go to the child and say, you're okay. You're okay. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. That is a very, again, mild form of gaslighting, right? We're not talking high on the Richter scale that's going to send the child to a therapist office. But still, in a moment of my discomfort, of my maybe even some shame voices that I didn't protect him, or that, he's screaming so loud, everyone's looking at me and telling me that I'm a bad parent, like in a moment of shame and my own discomfort of this moment of wanting him to just stop crying and be comforted and be better, I will invalidate his experience. I will invalidate that he might be in true pain, that he is upset about something. So that's a very mild version of that. Another incident of gaslighting that just kind of shows up in this world in general, and I hope I do it justice by explaining it, is the absence of what we call civil discourse, right? If anyone's out there in the social media and the media world, it's a pretty brutal place. There's a lot of public shaming. It's kind of that, I'm right, you're wrong, eat it. Get out of here. You're the devil. You're a horrible human. Judging around parenting. We've lost the ability to have uncomfortable conversations where I don't agree with you. I don't see it the way you see it, but golly gee, we're all different people. We're kind of, as I always tell clients, and you hear me say it sometimes if you watch my YouTube videos, we're all like aliens from outer space. And you either listen and engage to better understand where this person came from, and maybe they'll inform your heart and your understanding a little bit, and you might expand your capacity for compassion and empathy by hearing them and sitting in that uncomfortable discourse. Or you just shut it down and you gaslight them and you say, you're wrong, you're bad, everything's wrong. So I'm just trying to empower you to see the way that gaslighting kind of sprinkles into our everyday life and is a very culturally accepted behavior when you think about it. I always say physical abuse is so like, oh, if you get punched or kicked or anything like that, that's like, oh, unacceptable. And if you get called nasty names, any word expletive in the book, that's emotional abuse. But really, it's extremely traumatizing to feel what's going on in your body, see what's happening, present it to a trusted loved one, and have them say, you're crazy. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know why you're thinking this, but holy gee, gross. Because we can, by the way, sit with someone's difference of opinion and not gaslight ourselves. I should always be able to go to my family system or safe places, friends, communities, safe friends and community and therapists, where I can say, look, this is what's happening. I'm feeling this way. I don't like it. And the next question should be, tell me more. Tell me why you feel this way. What's going on? What's the story you're telling yourself? And then they can build upon a better understanding of where it's coming from. It doesn't always have to be right. I could be like, hey, husband, when you raised your eyebrow at me, the story I told myself is you think I'm a horrible wife. And he's like, I actually just had an itch in my eyebrow. So no, that's not what was happening. But you have to be comfortable with civil discourse. You have to be comfortable with agreeing to disagree. And our brain doesn't like it. So you have to remind your brain, it's okay, brain. There's not a black and white enemy. This isn't an obvious threat where this person's either gonna, stay married to me and love me or murder me. It's somewhere in the gray area. So let's go over, I'm going to finish up by just letting you know a couple pointers that I have for ways that you can start structuring your life to kind of stop the gaslighting and or structure it to avoid it in the future. So first things first is I think it's always healthy, especially after a relationship crises, which a lot of you have gone through major relationship crises, is to reset down in crises and assess who am I and who do I want to be? What do I want this life to look like? One of my favorite things that someone says about crises is from Glennon Doyle. She says the root word of crises is a Greek word for sift. And when you're in crises, and really think about this, what it does is it is like a sift for sand, where everything that's superfluous, everything that's not that important in life, quickly just goes through the sift. And only what is most important stays right there. And that's what crises does, is it really helps delineate in your life instantaneously what is most important to you, what you want the most, and everything else just falls through that's superfluous. And so in moments of crises, I always encourage clients to sit down and re-explore, or sometimes it's for the first time ever, their values and goals. And again, I have a whole curriculum book, and I'll talk about that later, that just asks questions, educates you on it. Another thing that's really important is to go through your boundaries and your non-negotiables. So I have this boundaries chart. It's available on my website for free, just in like under my resources tabs. And this is just a really great way, of saying, I know what my wants and needs are, and I will communicate them clearly. I'm not responsible for other people. They're not responsible for me. I share personal information gradually and in a safe, healthy way, et cetera. There's just a lot of really great nuggets in here to say, okay, it's really hard when you're living a very clear what's okay, what's not okay, who am I, what do I stand for, to be gaslighted. And again, I want to underpin that if you have been gaslighted, it's not because you've just been this lost soul who didn't know who he or she was to begin with, and then it set you up to be gaslighted. Again, you could be very securely attached, and you could have gone into this relationship with securely attached intentions and behaviors, such as, again, like we have hard conversations. If I say something that makes you angry, you can sit with it with me and we can come to a better understanding. We have forgiveness, we have honesty, we have transparency. So it doesn't mean that you were terrible at all these kind of things. However, if you are in a gaslighting relationship, you've probably quickly had your boundaries stripped away at, your instincts and intuition, who you are, what you stand for, just completely wrecked and devastated. So now is the invitation to kind of start rebuilding those things in your life. A few more things. Lean into your community. If you are repairing a relationship with someone who is a gaslighter, they just can't hold space for those uncomfortable conversations. They just go straight to like, it never happened. That's not how it happened. You're wrong. This is, when you're going to get over it. Maybe the problem is that your needs are too much and that you're just too emotionally unstable. If that's the go-to, then you got to lean into a community. So it's got to be therapists who are educated in this stuff, who don't actually gaslight you as well, by the way. 12-step communities and support communities that are available, support groups, non-judgmental friends who also don't gaslight you, right? They don't say what you should be doing, what you're doing wrong. People who show the space for empathy and compassion. And by the way, I have a whole other section on that, on empathy and compassion. You might be able to look it up on my YouTube channel. But compassion, remember, if I am sitting with a friend in compassion, or if I am a therapist sitting with a client in compassion, it is not one person who knows more or knows better and can like guide that person to ascend up to where I am. Compassion is the understanding that we all struggle. We all are in pain at one time or another. And so if I want someone to hold space for me when I lose my mom, or I'm going through a tough time, or I question my value and worth, and I just kind of need to muddle through that and talk about it and find empathy in that space, the me too, and I get it. I want to hold space for other people to do that, and I want them to hold space for me to do that. That's compassion. And I hope that you're finding that in your support groups. Another thing to help you rebuild who you are and reconnect with your instincts and intuition is keeping like a journal, or like talking into an auto recording or something like that. Because when you have that untethered, you're not speaking to anyone. This communication is not going to anyone. So it's not a relationship dyad type of communication. It's just you. It's really interesting to see what might pop up. Some anger that you didn't realize, or some insight about what you might be wondering or thinking or feel uncomfortable about that you weren't maybe feeling safe to say in the relationship. Mindfulness. This is going to cross all healing things. Mindfulness back, 10, 11 years ago, I would have been like, oh God, mindfulness, such like a hippie dippy saying that like, I don't hang out with people that do mindfulness. Sorry. I work and I win trophies. But mindfulness just keeps showing up in the research. So mindfulness can also be mindfulness, paying attention, meditation, prayer, sitting in stillness, thinking. When you're keeping a journal, that can be done with mindfulness. It's this idea that trauma disconnects you from your body and other people. Trauma and gaslighting disconnects you with your instincts and your intuition. And it's there. It never goes away. Like, you can't shut down that gut instincts, intuition that runs in the backdrop of your body all the time. It doesn't go away. So it's just you have to kind of kick out the defense mechanisms of, oh no, I'm wrong, I'm crazy. No, that's, and reconnect with it. Is it 100% accurate all the time? Absolutely not. Will it be falsely triggered because you have so much trauma at this point in your life? Sure, your instincts and intuition can often be wrong. But guess what? That's the beauty of healthier relationships. You can own that, you can wonder something, guess something, assert something, and then go back and repair if you were wrong. Get comfortable with being in the in-between space, right? That agree to disagree. No one is right or wrong. We're just shooting to be seen and heard. There's that saying in a coupleship, do you want to win or do you want to be understood and seen and heard and have a safe space? Do you want to listen to understand? That's what you want to do, is listen to understand and not to respond. Be comfortable with your flaws and strengths. So again, this goes back to the several other pieces about knowing who you are. So when someone comes at me and says, I think you're a little emotionally unstable, I can quickly go back and be like, I've done that inventory. I'm not. Like, I'm a forgiving person. I can sit and process. I can have really hard conversations. Sometimes, yeah, I get angry, and sometimes it might be a little bit more explosive, but like, I'm not emotionally unstable. I'm actually pretty grounded. And it's because you do those inventories. If you're familiar with the 12 steps, and I have a whole series on YouTube for free about how 12 steps for the non-addict can be very classic and helpful. But it's this idea that if I become very in tune and understand my good and my bad, my light and my dark, that if someone does come up to me and says, I don't know, like my husband, I think I've mentioned this recently in another YouTube, I'm loud. My family's loud. So when I get angry, I get loud, and that's not productive for our exchange. So if we are talking about something and he's like, "Ugh, you need to be quiet," or like, "Please talk quieter," I can be like, "Okay, yeah, I do have a tendency to be a little loud when I get boisterous." So it really can make a more productive engagement with another person. So no one needs to gaslight the other person. Daily inventories. I talked about the 12 steps. Step 10, 11, 12 are all about keeping your side of the street clean, so that when someone does try to gaslight you or shame you that you're emotionally unstable, you're a bad mom or dad, you're crazy, you're too jealous, too much of this, too not enough of this. 10, 11, and 12 are those daily inventories and practices to keep you very connected and very aware of who you are, who you're not, and that way you can fend that off mentally and emotionally a lot more easily, even if it's a trusted loved one. Hold others to all these same standards. As you really fight to know who you are and have this inventory and accountability around what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you can have hard conversations, you're going to hold other people to those same standards of, do you know who you are? Do you know what your boundaries are? And my last thing, never defend what you know to be true. Never, I just kind of always say there's some things where it's just, you just never negotiate with terrorists. There's people that will just come up to you and say the same poor me story or the same rationale or the same why I don't want to go to 12-step meetings, or why this, or why I'm different and unique and a unicorn. And I just don't defend what's to be true, especially again, when I'm working with addicts in recovery. I really hold my ground and go, yeah, no, sorry, that's not working. You know, you've tried other things and life's pretty unmanageable and you show a lot of powerlessness. So this is what you need to be doing. Never invalidate your reality or experience. So your gut and your feelings, whether or not they're 100% accurate or just fractionally accurate, don't ignore them. They're picking up something. Something's telling you it's not okay, and that's okay. Your body is a neurofeedback system, and you really want to honor that something's going on that's giving you a story that something's unsafe. So you really need to take the time to say, what is it? Is it the way the person said something? Is it something I saw? Is it something from my past that I haven't processed and acknowledged yet? But never ever invalidate what input you're receiving in your body. Talk it out safely with empathy, compassion, and don't confuse holding space for someone else's experience with like what gaslighting is. So I can totally disagree with somebody, but I can still hold space to say, you know, tell me more, help me understand. Okay, well, this doesn't make sense though. So help me understand this part. Okay, but I've always felt like it was like this. So give me more information because I just don't see how you've come to this conclusion. And the problem again is that your brain never finishes it off and go, that was a nice and easy and complete conversation that you won 100% and everything's fine now. That's not how conversations end. So do not expect this really great dopamine hit of like, that was a lovely, productive conversation. Most conversations, or I should say disagreements or civil discourse, does not end with this dopamine hit of like, oh yeah, you rocked that. That went 100% perfectly. It just doesn't. So that concludes that. Before I finish up, I have to let you know, if you want more information, I have my YouTube channel where I have a ton of resources on all this. You saw me show several different resources on values and goals. Most of these are all available on my online course, which I gave you a password and I think like a password and a code if you guys wanted to look into that online course. Otherwise, I have live workshops and new ones have just been put up for January 18th. So I'd encourage you to go check those out, the trade partners groups. And I also am a certified Daring Way facilitator. So I teach a lot of Brene Brown stuff, material about shame, resiliency, vulnerability, getting out of fear states, shame states, to have real, authentic, transparent intimacy with yourself and with others. And I believe that that's it. So I'm going to shut everything down and have you ask any questions that you want to ask. And I appreciate you joining us.